Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week, as we usually do, with some brand new music. This one, the music video came out just earlier this month. We're looking at the band Nungara with the song North Star. I saw that this was posted in the Discord, and there was some positive wrong button. Let's bring the YouTube video out. Thank you. I saw this was posted on the Discord, and I saw a couple of positive comments on it, and I was like, okay, let's dive in. The only thing I know is that it's metal of some sort. So, let's kick it, see what they're bringing to the table with North Star. Right off the bat, this is heavy. We have a massive bass tone here. Nice metric mod on the bass kick. Okay. A little bit of reverb on there, but thinner vocals on top of the big music. It's nice contrast. Those half-step runs, okay.
Suffocating and living to life. The music and the inside dead, navigating side by side.
Yeah, the 2 and 4 on the bell of the ride, I dig that. Creating a lot of space in that section. The jumping back and forth between the cleans and harshes. There's that triplet mod on the bass kick again. It's interesting, I'm having a tough time following the structure of this. Ooh. Oh. Yeah, I like that chord progression. Lots of tension in the middle. We kick into that spicy second chord that takes us into a very tense third. Usually you find the rising tension on third and fourth. There's that, you can hear the bass clearly here. Oh, dude, the drums are on 1 and 3, accenting on the snare, but the rest of the band feels more laid back. Yeah, there's a very interesting push and pull rhythmically between the drums and the guitars. It gives the song like a divided section, like it's being ripped apart. See, now we're all unified on their accent points. Nice use of space too. Embellishing on space here. But see, this is what I'm talking about. That drum pattern is from earlier in the track, but the riff was new. I don't. The structure is difficult to follow because it feels like everybody's kind of doing their own thing while still being a cohesive whole. Yeah. Those gallops. It's been 5 minutes already? Holy cow. Yeah, dude, that's wild. All right. I want to talk about the structure thing because there's a lot of cool other things. I pointed them out. I feel like I'm just going to be repeating myself on a lot of that, but I really want to dive into what makes the structure on this interesting to me. So, if I listen to the vocals, the beginning of the song, I thought I had an understanding of this. When we had the clean vocals, that was our verse. And when we had the harshes, that was our chorus. At least that's what it seemed like to start with. And the guitars kind of lined up with this. In fact, when we got done with the harshes the first time, like the first group of harshes were done, we went back to the guitar riff that kicked the song off. I was like, okay, I have a strong grasp on how we're going to be building up different ideas here, and kind of getting in a roadmap of what the song is. Around this part, though, is where the vocals started to go back and forth, and I thought that was pretty cool contrast. Oh, we're introducing some harshes into the verse. Awesome. But that's when I noticed that the guitar riff was slightly different. The drums were not playing exactly what they were on the last verse either, and when I thought we were supposed to go into a chorus, we kind of didn't. There was a new drum pattern. Well, it wasn't a new one. It was the one where we had the ride bell, the bell of the ride symbol on 1 and 3, I think it was. A very spacious feel. Last time we used that as a full section. This time we used it as a single loop transition, a one bar idea to help push into a new riff and a new drum pattern. So that's where I began to get a little confused. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's been repurposed into something else. So then I start listening to the guitars. I'm like, okay, it feels like we're going back towards a verse. But then we don't. We have this extended bridge section where we have a series of, we have a couple of guitar melodies in here. We have a lot of riffs, atmospheric ideas, just really going for emotion and chord progression and trying to evoke a lot of this weight in the song. But all of this, the guitars seem to be moving in a linear fashion, setting up, a 4-bar idea of this riff, and then a 2-bar idea of that riff, and then a 6-bar idea of that riff. It was really difficult for me to figure out the pattern of when we were going to change. It also seemed that the bass was not changing at the same time as the guitar, and while the guitar was focused on this slow progression of this is what I was doing. I'm going to modify this one piece of it and do that. I'm going to bring this idea in from earlier, from like the verse. We're going to inject that in here. That's going to be this next section, and like slowly evolving this idea over time. But the bass was just returning back to some older riffs that we had. The drums were doing the same thing, but not picking the same pairing. If the bass was playing what I thought was originally the chorus bass lick, the drums were not doing what they were doing at the chorus. And so it feels exceptionally amorphous in a lot of ways. Usually bands are locked in. They make their verse. This is what the drum plays at the verse, and the bass plays, and the guitar plays. That's the verse idea. Then we have the chorus idea, right? And they're locked in together, but it doesn't feel that way here. They do all tend to move generally at the same time, but where they move to is very different. And so if I were to map this out and create a structure to sort of understand the song, it would it would probably benefit me to create a roadmap of every single instrument to see how they evolve and change and what they call back and what they reuse and what they recontextualize across a song, because I think all the instruments are doing something completely different. It's really interesting, but I think it all sort of culminates right there at the penultimate section of the bridge. In fact, this is pretty close to the end of the song now that I think about it. When we had this pushing and pulling idea, I mentioned that the snare was accenting beats 1 and 3, really driving forward on this, trying to present this forward energy. As soon as the bar starts, you get a downbeat accent on that beat 1 on the snare. The guitars, though, they feel very laid back. They're not accenting. Well, they accent on 1 and like the and of 2 and then 4. So it's like a very different rhythmic accent than what the drums are doing. And it feels like it's trying to pull the song apart. Aside from that first downbeat, the guitars are trying to lean back. They're trying to slow the song down. The drums are driving forward. And it feels like the song doesn't know what to do at this point, and it feels like it's getting torn apart, and it's trying its best to hold everything together, and then it snaps back and everybody locks in on the same accent points in that final section of the bridge. This was very cool. Where prior to this, it seemed like every instrument was kind of going in its own direction, walking its own path while still working as a cohesive whole. Here, they were working together to create a sound of falling apart, of moving in opposite directions. It really brings this idea of separate paths at like the head of what that concept would be. Rather than walking separate paths in parallel, we're now walking opposing paths, only to snap back together and walk the same path. It is a very cool little narrative moment there, and I love it. It leaves me, overall, the song, it leaves me kind of confused on a first time listen. This is definitely going to be something that's going to take me a few times to understand, to get the gist of on that structural level. But it has so much food for thought here. There's so much I can continue to find and listen for on subsequent listens, and I'm a huge fan of that. The other thing that I really enjoy about this is that it is progressive metal, but it's not what I think of when I think of progressive metal. Usually, the first thing that pops in my head is, Dream Theater. It's a lot of weird time signatures and wild phrasings and phrase extensions and doing 7-bar phrases because why not? And lots of shred and showing off and showmanship and typical guitar wankery going on. But this walks a different path of progressive writing. There's still a lot of skill on display. I like the bass licks, the drum work is interesting and constantly evolving itself. The guitar has a couple of riffs in there that I think are pretty strong, but for the most part, it's focused on progressive atmosphere writing. It's focused more on emotion and chord progression than riffs and licks and shredding and all that kind of stuff. And it feels easier to groove to, easier to get into than your Dream Theater style of prog metal. And I really dig that. I like more like super complex technical playing, just pure spectacle, jaw on the floor because you can't believe you just saw the dude play that. But then you get something like this that I think it's deceptively easy, where it sounds like it's a simple song, but the more that I listened to it, the more I realized where all the complexities lie. But it's all under the surface. It's not up front. It's not spectacle. You know, this is stuff that I think builds a complex song by using a lot of different building blocks. and allows the song to be the culmination of it all. You can just look at this building, right? Going with the idea of building blocks, right? And we build a wall, and you're like, yeah, that's a dang good wall, right? And you just enjoy the wall for what it is. But when you start looking at the construction of the blocks themselves, when you see some of the nuance and the technique that went into the building of this wall, if you understand how the wall is built, you can really get a lot of insight into what's going on. I feel like I've really stretched this metaphor. It's it's getting a bit weak here, but if you start to look under the surface, you'll find a lot of nuance. And like I mentioned, just structurally, there's so much I can talk about here, and that's only what I picked up on a first time listen. I have no idea how the structure actually works on this. It's something I would love to dig into in the future. Um, But even when we look at chord progression, we look at atmosphere building, this is kind of nuanced. I like the amount of movement that we have in it. I like the highs and the lows. It is generally an aggressive song, I'd say, as far as like tension, volume, that kind of energy. It's pretty peak most of the time. But when you listen to the emotional side of it, there are heavier, weightier sections. There are tenser sections. I'd even say that there's a little bit of like a moody melancholy in a few places. And particularly when the vocals come in, it introduces a different vibe altogether. The harsh vocals, of course, lean into that angst, that aggression, that weight, that metal heaviness. But the clean vocals are a different beast altogether. And I pointed it out during the reaction too, is that this song is really heavy. The bass tone is humongous. The guitar is large and meaty and fuzzy. The drums are massive. The dude's just beating the crap out of them, and there's so much big production on it. It is a big sound for just three instruments. How do you separate the vocals in that? Well, you make them ethereal almost. There is something very like angelic in the reverb, but also something thin and ephemeral about the timbre of the vocals themselves. And so they do kind of compete on size through the use of the extra reverb, but when you look at just I think what's being produced by the vocalist, it's in stark contrast to everything else. There is a levity to this that stands in stark opposition to the heavy weighted gravity of the music. I really love that. That division there is phenomenal, and the production on this is fantastic too. The separation, I think, is massive. There is a gulf between the size and weight of the instruments and the weight of the vocals. And it has them sort of hovering way above the rest of the music. And, being like an octave or two above the guitars are certainly going to help too. That sells the distance 100%. But what I find interesting then is that if that's such a perfect combination to put with the vocals, why do the harshes work so well too? And honestly, I don't have all the answers. I don't know. My guess is that there's going to be something about production that goes into that helps separate the vocals from probably the electric guitar. I think would be the closest sound analogy there, like where there's going to be the most overlap. But the harsh vocals come through rather clear too. Part of that's going to be the mix. Part of it, I think, is also the delivery. There's a lot of enunciation and clarity to the delivery of the harshes that I appreciate. I still couldn't pick up words. It's still a growl, although I think it's a fry. It's a lower fry though, or a higher growl. Y'all will have to let me know what you think it is. I'm actually kind of intrigued. Now I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to it. Um, See if I can't pick that out. But it also stands as like a middle point, I feel, against the instrumentation and the higher pitched vocals, while still being a contrast to those higher vocals. And what I liked a lot, bringing it up in the reaction even, was that we had the cleans, and then we had the heavy, the harshes. And I kind of viewed them as two separate sections originally, but then they started to bounce back and forth more quickly, and it was almost this culminating idea, a rapidity of how fast we would oscillate between the two until they were removed entirely for the chorus. I mean, for the bridge. And I don't know what that means. I kind of want to know what that means. I think it's an interesting pattern in here, and it feels like it has purpose. But I don't know. Maybe the lyrics would help explain that a little bit. But I think wrapping this up right here, I do see a lot of interesting patterns in here, and I'm curious what I mean. Even just the parallel lines to opposing lines to locked in together that happens in the bridge, that little narrative pocket there. What does that mean? I want to know. I mean, it could just be, hey, we wrote some cool riffs and it just sounds great together, and that's how we made it. But this idea of the North Star, the visuals during that section of a black hole, um, immense gravity that happens right before, I mean, during the idea of like being ripped apart and then snapping together and locking in place. I don't know, man. It feels like there's purpose to it. So with all of that said, this is definitely a strong contender for um, some excellent atmospheric heavy metal. I don't even know what genre this is. Sludge metal, I think, would probably be where I put it, like progressive sludge. Post metal is probably a good umbrella for it. I'm not usually a big fan of post metal, but this is clicking with me. So I'm kind of hoping if I dive into the rest of their music, I'll enjoy that too. With all that said, let's hit some lyrics. The lyrics are interesting. The first stanza says, sailing through the night, hands on the wheel, cold breath of night keeps me awake. This idea of just chilling, windows down, arm out the window, moving with the wind, just driving down the highway. You're the only car on there, on the street. You're just enjoying the ride. I like the idea of sailing through the night in a car. That's an interesting choice of words. But then it says, contrast drives me, suffocating and bringing to life the certain and the uncertain, navigating side by side. I like this. It talks about being on the edge, being on the cusp of something, confronting your fears, that exhilarated terror of being up to the point of the known and peering into the unknown, the contrast of that. It's like being afraid of heights and inching closer to, I don't know, the edge of a top mountain or plateau. Maybe even there's a guard railing, something that ensures your safety, but your fear takes hold. But the joy of seeing the landscape, of being this high up, mixed with the terror of being this high up. That idea of feeling like you're suffocating but being brought to life, the contrast there. Sitting on the knife's edge, that's what drives the narrator forward. It says, forever chasing a receding horizon, North Star shining bright. Got goals ahead of you. Don't know what your life's going to bring. Don't know what chasing these goals are going to do. Maybe you'll achieve them. Maybe you won't. That horizon does continue to get ever further, seemingly. But you have to take this chase. You have to take this drive. There's just nothing in the narrator that says I'm fine with sitting still. Gotta chase it down. It says every mile ahead awaits me, unfolding potential before my eyes. As I travel through time, inner vision my true guide. I am aware now this endless journey is my final destination. I like that. Almost as if having a moment to peer into the mind's eye and hypothesize what the ending of this would be. What happened if I caught this horizon? What happens if I achieve my dream? And realizing that you never will, not because you won't be good enough to achieve your dream, but because your dream is about being better than you were yesterday. You're always going to have a bigger dream to chase. You might hit that next milestone, but that horizon will always be in front of you. Your dreams will always get bigger. You may get this one, but that's not a stopping point for you. The drive itself, both the figurative drive of being in this car on the highway, but also the drive inside, your need to improve, is endless. that striving for that next step of greatness is the destination. This is exactly where the narrator wants to be. This push and pull. What is the goal? What is the journey? What is the path? What is the destination? How they all intermingle and intertwine, how they're sort of one and the same. This idea of not knowing what's on the precipice, but wanting to get up there anyways. The fear, the accomplishment, the exhilaration, all molded into one. It's about being lost positively, not knowing what happens next and enjoying that uncertainty. I think the song does a great job of doing this too. I was lost in the song. The structure is sort of amorphous, doing whatever it wants, but still always working. I enjoyed every moment of the song, even if I didn't understand it. I'm not certain about what the song was doing at any given moment, but I was certain about what the song was doing on its overarching idea. I understood the goals, even if I didn't understood the current moment. That's exactly what the song is about. And using that to drive yourself, to give yourself that motivation to keep going. Because that feeling of being at that moment, right on the edge, that's what keeps the narrator pushing forward. So it makes them feel alive. Yeah, dude, so good. So good. The layers of the lyrics on top of the music, bringing all the thematic elements together. The journey of the music alone, I mean, I've gushed about the sheer structural elements of it for like 7 minutes. So, yeah, I'm on board with this. Golly. This is right up my alley. But is it up your alley? These are my thoughts on Nungara's North Star. What did you think about it, though? Did you enjoy it? Was there anything that stood out to you? Was there anything that you agreed with me about it or even disagreed? Let me know. Put any of that, as well as any opinions or interpretations that you might have about the song, put all that in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.